Something's wrong with my TV because this Snyder Cut is showing up weird as hell. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It, and it's been a minute. I'm back. Had to take a little bit of a recharge, but I'm here because I could not miss this one. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. It's finally here. The groundswell of the social media tags, the Twitter campaigns, the release the Snyder Cut anthems that everyone has been saying is finally here. We can tangibly look and see what it is that this Snyder Cut is finally given. So before I get into my review of the Snyder Cut, I just want to give you a little bit of a background as to where I stand on the Zack Snyder scale of things. I love Dawn of the Dead. Like, love. I own it. I love Watchmen. I own that. I own 300. I really enjoy those films. I was one of the 6 people that were actually in the theater to see Sucker Punch. And I came out of that very disappointed, but I still thought visually it was an impressive film. I think Zack is a great cinematographer, and I think he shoots things in beautiful, beautiful artistic tapestry. And so when he got Man of Steel, you have a couple of people who probably are friends of this channel and who have watched this and been around me. They know that I was like, oh, that's a perfect marriage. Like, I don't see anybody better than who can visually put something like Man of Steel and Superman on screen like Zack Snyder, even despite how much I felt and did not like Sucker Punch. So when Man of Steel dropped, and I did a double feature that day because it came out with This Is the End and I watched both. But when it dropped, I could not have been more heartbroken. There are some things I like about that movie, but there are a lot of things that I just don't care for. The main 2 things that I did not like was, one, the characterization of Superman. It feels very simplistic and easy to say he felt dark or broody, because that's not entirely it. It just felt cold. I never got connected to him. I never felt empathy for him or any type of connection to this version of Superman. And so that made, while I was in for the majority of the film, that made the ending part, the last 45 minutes, was just one big CGI Zack Snyder jerk fest on the screen. It didn't work for me. My sensory got overloaded. It was just too much. I needed some moments of like differentiating of action, but I also needed some character heartbeats or some character moments to happen in there. And so that's why overall Man of Steel just didn't click with me. I don't think it's terrible. It wasn't what I wanted for how much of a fan I was of Snyder and how much of a fan I am of the DC universe. It didn't mesh well. And then for BVS, I just hate. I don't think it's a good movie at all. I have nothing positive to say about that. That's including the Ultimate Edition. There's some things that I think the Ultimate Edition definitely puts back in that should never have been removed. But overall, I still just don't think, as a film, it's a poorly made film with some questionable casting decisions. And that's not Affleck or Gadot. Both of them are A1 in my book. But I was not a fan of Lex in this movie, and that sort of bled into the rest of how I felt about that movie. So there I stand. Overall, as a Snyder fan, I love his stuff pre the DCEU. As a DC fan, I have not particularly liked the way or style or characterizations of what he's done with the characters. And so I went into this film, Justice League, the Snyder Cut version, very meh. I didn't care. I loathed what Joss did. It felt like a Frankenstein mishmash of 2 clearly different ideals and what was wanted to sort of merge together for a quick buck. It just didn't work. And so I went with this, like, I don't care about this film. And so after watching it, I can say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I absolutely fucking love this movie. Like, love this movie. Yeah, shocked the shit out of me. Didn't expect to. I could not stop smiling from ear to ear. This is sort of the perfect marriage that I had always sort of expecting from the earlier versions of Snyder merging with the DC. 2 of the things that I think the Snyder verse had that I think this film course corrects is that there is both a sense of humanity in this Justice League in droves, and there is a sense of joy to counter all the dread and doom that I think the other two films had, that this has as well, but there's a bit of levity is not the word, but there's joy. There's some type of there's something different, a yin to the yang of everything just being dour and sad. And this is the first time that those two worlds were sort of married together. And this isn't to say that he's like trying to recreate what Marvel did, because I feel like more what Joss did with his version of Justice League. But I think what happens here is he's still very much in the Snyder world of how he's doing things and how it's beautiful landscapes and shots and artistic, almost damn renderings on screen. That's still active, but it's just peeling back some layers and pouring in a bit of humanity and heart and joy that I think I personally never got from any of the previous Snyderverse films. There are some fantastic character beats that I just didn't think that I would be privy to in some of these films, because I outside of probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire Snyderverse is the scene when Cal, as a kid, first gets his powers and his hearing just starts becoming amplified. He can hear everything. He runs into the closet and Martha has to go meet him. I think that's brilliant. I wish there was more of that throughout the entire series. I never felt that type of connection until this movie. And there's some great stuff. Victor listening to the tape of his dad. I think the part where Cal is sort of getting back to being like he knows he has to go help everyone, and he just has this moment where he hears both of his fathers kind of layering on top of each other, telling him to get back out there. I'm a sucker for that. That felt good. There are just a lot of those good character heartbeat moments that I was like, oh, why wasn't this here the whole time, Zach? You can do this. I know you can. Why is this the first time that you're actually actively showing us that this is what you have in your wheelhouse? I don't know what Joss was doing when he took out all of the Cyborg pieces, because Cyborg is definitely the thread or heartbeat of this, and that's where a lot of the humanity comes in. It's this weird, almost Frankenstein, but because his father wanted to keep a part of him, it's gorgeous. I don't know why all of that was ripped out, because when it's put back in and it's layered with some of the other folks doing their things, it's powerful, heartfelt, and it makes when we just go full on spectacle at the when Zach gets into his action bag, which he is fantastic at doing, it makes that work, because now I care about everybody that is on screen. Now I have some type of emotional connection to them, which I've never had before. The interaction between the team members of this is glorious. Like I'm giddy with just seeing the small moments that each character sort of has with each other, from Bruce to Diana to Arthur to Barry. Like their interactions with each other are just sometimes small, sometimes what would be considered to be insignificant, but it works. And I'm very confused as to why the majority of that was almost all but removed from the Whedon cut or the Joss's cut, and removed in favor of everybody sounding like Joss. Joss has a tendency to make all of his characters quippy and do that. Like, we're all basically the smartest people in the room and snarky and Joss Whedon style. Whereas this, while there are levity moments, most of it comes from Flash, but you get a little bit of everybody else sort of in the vein of what their character is. Their jokes come out, whereas it felt more forced and like, hey, I gotta put on because, action comedy is what I'm doing. Here, it feels genuine and the camaraderie works. One scene that stands out, and it's not even that big of a scene, it's just a moment, and there's a lot of these beats that happen, but there's a moment where Arthur and Barry are about to go do this plan to rescue or recapture Cal's body. And Barry's just trying on different hats. And he's like, hat, you want like look A or look B? He goes from look A, Arthur's looking, he's like, no, not look A. And he puts on look B. And Arthur, just in the way that Jason Momoa can, just goes like, can you show me, let's look at what A was again. And it's perfect. It's perfect. It's simple. It's not like, haha, I'm going for the joke. It's just like, that's what that character does in that moment. And there's so many of those throughout the entire film that just make you connect just that bit more to the character, so that when we go batshit crazy at the back end, it feels like, all right, let's see what the hell we're going to do here. Zach, the action in this is A1. It's perfect. And I know some people would be like, well, you didn't like the long 45-minute action sequence that occurred in Man of Steel. Still don't, nor do I like the one that's at the back end of BVS. Why it works here and why the action set pieces work here. It's one that you care about them, but two, there's a difference between all of the characters. So Batman does not fight the same way. There's Wonder Woman does not fight the same way as Flash. So you see 5 to 6 different characters using their power sets differently. Whereas in Man of Steel, you're just watching two people punch, punch, kick, two computer generated images that I didn't care about punch, punch, kicking the whole time. Whereas here, it's a little bit more layered in player. You have different levels. You got Batman shooting, you got Flash running, you got different types of action. So it works better for me. In fact, it becomes, oh crap, what crazy shit am I about to see next? And when they work together as a team, oh, that's when it gets joyous. There's a moment, I won't spoil for folks who haven't seen it yet, but there's a moment where there's like they're passing a villain from one to the other for the big finale, and you play that finale versus the finale that we got of them in Joss's cut, and you're like, how could you have possibly thought anything that you did was the better way to go? There are some hangups that I have, though. It is by no means perfect. This is probably just a product of not having the budget or the backing to do it, but there are moments when the CGI in this is atrocious. Specifically Steppenwolf and Cyborg. There are moments where it's clear, had Snyder been given the WB bang for buck, like, here, go do whatever it is you need to do, and actually had backing behind this, I think that some of this stuff might have got cleaner or better, or if this was actually going to be a theatrical release, it may have gotten cleaned up there. But here, there are moments where you're like, oh, this looks bad. You're having fun, at least I am having fun, and I'm entertained enough that I can kind of like overlook where you can see the threads or you would pull at strings a little bit, but it's not the top of the line CGI, and that could rub some folks the wrong way. I do love Snyder's desire to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at you. He's going to be like, yo, I may not get to play with these toys again. I may not get to live in this sandbox of DC EU again. So while I'm here, I'm literally throwing everything that I humanly can at you. You want Martian the Manhunter? Cool. He doesn't really belong in the story, but fuck it. Here we go. I'm going to throw him in there. I got Deathstroke. You want to see him? Cool. Don't know why, but here we are. We're going to do a Nightfall sequence. Doesn't have anything to do with the story that I'm telling you right now, but I may not be back here, so let's throw it in. It gets to be a bit much. And it's weird because I don't fault him for it, because I know he's not going to get to play with these again, and considering how WB sort of shafted him, I'm not that mad at it. But the story that is being told here is sort of done a disservice by you kind of doing all these other things on the side. He also kind of leaves you with blue balls because it sets up a movie and a storyline that we all know that we're never going to be able to see because Snyder's not going to be allowed to play with these again. All that said brings me to my biggest issue, and I think it is probably the issue that most people have when they click that link or they click that thing on HBO Max saying, cool, let's start this, and they see that big 4 hours that is sitting there. It's a long film. I did it in doses, mainly because I was tired when it first aired. So I watched 2 hours, and then I watched the back 2 hours. This is a lot of film to take in. I did not notice the time at all, either time, especially the back end. It moves quick. Once chapter 5 hits, and I know there's another 2 hours left in this, it goes. You don't notice it. But I don't know any film that is 4 hours long that is considered to be perfect. I think this is a really, really good film at 4 hours. I think it would be a damn, like, almost perfect movie if it was 3 hours long. There's some stuff that could be shut out of here. And it's small things. It's little small things that I think Zack wanted to just like, I want to put it all in here. I love seeing Kirstie Clemons as Iris West and establishing that Flash is what he does to save people, how human he is, and sort of his quirkiness and mannerisms. That scene, however, could be removed because we get 2 other scenes that establish Flash and Barry in the exact same way. I don't think it's necessary. Now, I love it because it all works, and I still would kind of have a hard time trying to pick and choose, but at some point in time, you have to say, okay, not all of this needs to be here. And I think had an editor or somebody got to take a pass at this once, they would have been able to trim this down from 4 hours to 3 hours and had what I think would have been one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. What we get now is a film that feels a little overstuffed at moments. but still is a damn fun and enjoyable ride to be on. That said, on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. Even at its current running time, this is a play it again, Sam. Like, I really want my wife to watch this. I kind of paused her for a minute. Like, let me go in first to see, because I know you didn't like BVS and I don't want to set you up for failure. I think she would enjoy this. I know the running time is going to freak some people out and scare some people off, but I don't think you'll notice it. Once you're in it, you're kind of just like, oh, it moves. To the point that when the epilogue popped up, I was like, wait, really? We're done here? This is over? As the person who enjoys Marvel and DC, I will say that up until this point, there was a big signifying difference between what was being done with Marvel and what was being done with DC in film. I think for Marvel, they were taking C, D, and F level characters that I really did not give a shit about and making me care about them. Whereas DC was taking characters that I absolutely grew up loving, reading, adoring, and for me, pissing all over them. And this is the first time where I felt that I was getting a film that was putting them on an equal level and doing sort of some of the same things that Marvel has been doing with characters that I know far less about. The biggest thing that I have to say about this film, though, despite me haven't had this much fun and enjoyment with the DC property in a long time, the biggest thing is that I am happy that Zack got to finish this. I'm happy that Zack got to do this because the way that this film was watched and managed and removed from him at a time of tragedy is sickening. It was sickening. I'm very happy that he got to put out his vision of this film to the world in all its glory, in the way that he wanted, in the way that he intended, 4-hour cut, all of that. While I have issues with it, it's what he wanted to do, and I think the way that this was all handled, he deserved to do that, and I think it's going to be an interesting look forever to sort of look between the differences between what Joss took, while it wasn't obviously his vision in the first place. He took footage, Joss came up with what he did, and Zack came up with what he did. I mean, while the films are not that far apart as far as their plot, they feel light years different than each other. It's not even close. It's fascinating to see the difference between the two and how one person completely butchered another person's vision, and the person who actually had the vision took it and made it one of the best things that I've ever seen out of the DCEU since, for me, probably The Dark Knight. I really love this movie. I know that's going to shock a lot of people. But what did you guys think of Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut? Go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. We also have a sister podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore. We talk about classic films like Gone with the Wind or Back to the Future and look at what those films did at the time that they came out and seeing if they can get away with doing some of those things today through the eyes of 2021. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.